the Lord of the ghosts, which are visible. Purport comes to mind, grace is not just one of God. Kasyapa has already told his wife Kiti to wait for a while. Now he warns her that failure to consider the particular time will result in punishment from the ghosts and evil spirits who move during this time, along with their master, Lord Rudra, Lord Shiva. Well, there's a time for doing everything. There's a time to work, there's a time to go to sleep, there's a time to eat, there's a time to procreate. A lot of things people have to learn so that they do not make mistakes and unnecessarily suffer. But if you don't read Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, you won't learn any of these things. Do they teach these things in school? No. So it's important that we learn all these things. Otherwise, we could be making major mistakes without even knowing it. And that's the nature of modern culture. People ignore the scriptures and unknowingly engage in all kinds of illicit activities, not even realizing that they're making a big mistake that can impact their whole life. Now, let me give you an example. You're hearing about Mr. Trump in the newspaper every day, right? His name is there every day. Trump did this, Trump did that. But what is it that he did that's getting him in the newspapers every day? He had illicit sex, not just with one woman, but with many women. And because of that, he lost a. He was in a well, he had illicit sex with this one lady, and she took him to court, and he lost the court decision, and he has to pay her now hundreds and millions of dollars. Right. Now, how is he doing that? Well, there's so many tricks that are out there in the material world. So he gets loans, he gets different types of monetary, let's say, monetary, what are they called? Keep that. Monetary instruments to which are basically called, they're promises of payment, so that they don't seize all his property right away and give him time to pay those huge amounts of money that he has to pay. Now, if he could only control his sex life, none of this would happen to him. But he thought, Trump thought, and he still thinks that he's invincible, and he can defile women and get away with it, but you never could get away with anything. And what happens is that he's being shamed also in public. So it's not a good thing to be like him, have a big ego and think that he can do almost anything and get away with it because he's very rich. However, by seeing examples, two types of examples in life. One is how to do things correctly, and the other is how to not do things correctly. You learn from both. So from Harivilas Thakur, you're learning how to do things correctly. And from Trump, you're learning how to not do things correctly. Now you have to have both knowledge. You have to have knowledge of both. But but in the case of, how to not do things correctly. You don't have to do it yourself. You can learn simply by hearing about it or seeing it or doing it. So you have three ways of learning. Either one way, you hear about it and know that this thing is wrong and you shouldn't do it. Second way is you hear about it, but you see it also. Number three is you hear about it, you see it, but you do it. And number four is you hear about it, you see it, you do it, and you can't stop doing it. So there are different levels of receiving knowledge, or and the last level is the worst because you don't really learn your lesson. You keep going back and back all the time, make the same mistake and suffer for it. Just like someone may be a thief and he gets caught and he's put in jail. And as soon as he gets out of jail, again, he starts his thievery, right? Again, he gets caught and he's put in jail. And then as soon as he gets out of jail, again, he gets caught with thievery and he's put back in jail. So those are called recidivists. They go back to performing the same crime over and over and over again. They can't stop. And the same way, there are people who have bad habits and they suffer because of it, but they keep going back and doing the same bad habits over and over again. Like, for example, someone who smokes. So they get really sick and they sort of make a vow, I'm going to stop smoking, right? Because they know it's bad for them. But then one thing leads to another, they start smoking again. Or an alcoholic. An alcoholic knows it's bad to take alcohol. Sometimes they go to the hospital several times. And then they come out and let's do it again. One day, this is a long, long time ago, someone wanted me to come with them to see a person that was in a public, what I say, public hospital, a poor person's hospital, right? And that means that, you don't have your own room, you're in almost like a gymnasium, and so many other people like yourself are sick and so forth. Well, anyway, we went to one of those places. This was in Paris. And I went with someone else who asked me to come and to maybe give some spiritual instruction to the person who was there. And, he was there because he was an alcoholic and he got very sick and he was trying to recuperate in the hospital. So when we go there, the person I was with, he had a bottle of whiskey hidden on his body. And as soon as we get there, he beginning to talk to the guy, and he slips the bottle of whiskey into the bed of the guy. And the other guy was really, happy. So thank you very much. I was waiting for this, And they never learned their lesson, right? And but that doesn't really help the person that's sick. It just makes it worse, right? So, but most people have the difficulty of giving up bad habits until they get so sick that it looks like they're going to die. So one time there was this lady, she was really overweight, really, she was fat. Let's put it like that. So she went to the doctor and she said, what can I do to lose weight? Said, well, I'm not sure. He said, you might go on a diet. So I've been trying every diet, Like, for example, my sister-in-law, she was on a diet for 40 years. And after 40 years of dieting, she gained 100 pounds. So what kind of a diet was it, right? And then, whenever we'd sit down with a family dinner, she'd say, oh, don't eat that. There's too much sugar in it, and don't eat this. It's not good for you. And she was an expert on what you should not eat. But she herself after dieting 40 years, she just kept gaining more and more weight. So there's some crazy people in this world. It's unbelievable. Anyway, we have to learn to control ourselves. And how do you control? How do you develop control of yourself? It's not by, there are several theories. One theory of the nonsense mind bodies is the way you control yourself for bad habits is you do the bad habits until you get frustrated by doing them.
Yeah.
Eventually you'll give up.
Yeah.
That never works.
That's the argument. Yeah.
That never works. Those are like, crazy theories. And there are different spiritual groups, so-called spiritual groups, sometimes recommend it.
Hmm.
That you do the bad things over and over again, eventually you lose your attraction to it and you start doing good things. So there are a lot of theories in the world, but mostly, based on speculation. So it's better to avoid the speculators and take up Krishna consciousness and get the proper knowledge of how to do things. Okay, so let's see, we're on Canto 3, Chapter 14, text 23. I think we might have read this already, but anyway, we'll read it and start from this point. And Kashyapa Muni's time, D14. This particular time is most inauspicious because at this time, the horrible stories and constant companions of stored in the ghost are visible. Purport. Kashyapa has already told his wife Diti to wait for a while. And now he warns her that failure to consider the particular time will result in punishment from the ghosts and evil spirits who move during this time along with their master, Lord Rudra, or Shiva. Now, if you read this, if you tell your friend of yours, let's say in school or a co-worker, this point that's being stated, do you think they would believe you? No, they think you're crazy. I don't see any ghosts at 6 o'clock in late afternoon. I don't see someone riding on a Nandi, and a bunch of ghosts following him. So what you're saying is crazy. I mean, what are you drinking? But if we read the scriptures and see, this is the way to learn. You learn. There's a lot of things we don't see in life, but if you read the scriptures, you'll learn that they actually exist, and we have to avoid them. So that's true also. Like, for example, you look at the sun without having any education, without reading any books, and you think it's just a little disk in the sky. But if you read a book about the sun, they say, well, it's so many miles away, and it's hundreds of times the diameter of the sun, hundreds of times bigger than the diameter of the Earth. So on. All of a sudden, now when you look at the sun, you have more understanding of what it is, how far away it is from the Earth, and so forth. But that's because you read a book written by someone who's a scientist. You can also read books which are, that's why they say that is this book fiction or is it nonfiction? Fiction means it's all speculated. Nonfiction is supposed to be not speculated. So if you read a scientific book about how far the sun is away from the Earth, you'd be surprised because when you look up at it, this looks like a disk in the sky. So there's a necessity to correct our eyes' limitation with knowledge from experts. And like, for example, let's say you get a rash on your body, you're not sure what it is. So you go to the doctor, and the doctor looks at it and says, well, you have it's a cancerous growth in the body. You have to eliminate it and cut it off or something. You didn't know, and you knew there's something wrong maybe, but you didn't know what it was. So you go to an expert, and they said, this is a cancerous growth on the outside of your body. We'll cut it off right away, whatever. So, page 24, Lord Shiva, the king of the ghosts, sitting on the back of his bull carrier, travels at this time, accompanied by ghosts who follow him for their wealth. Now, this is Kashyapa speaking to his wife, Diti. Lord Shiva, purport. Lord Shiva or Rudra is the king of the ghosts. Ghostly characters worship Lord Shiva to be gradually guided toward a path of self-realization. Mayavadi philosophers are mostly worshippers of Lord Shiva. Okay, so that means that first of all, he's saying ghostly characters worship Lord Shiva to be gradually guided toward the path of self-realization. And then Prabhupada says, Mayavadi philosophers are mostly worshippers of Lord Shiva. So he's comparing them in a roundabout way, that they're like ghostly characters. And Sripad Sankaracharya is considered to be the incarnation of Lord Shiva for preaching godlessness to the Mayavadi philosophers. Well, godlessness, that means no God, right? So, Sankaracharya, who's an incarnation of Lord Shiva, is preaching godlessness to the Mayavadi philosophers. What does that mean exactly? It means that they become atheists. The Mayavadis are atheists. They, even if they talk about God, they talk about God in terms of Mayavad philosophy, that he doesn't have a body, and basically, what does that mean? That means he doesn't have eyes, doesn't have ears, doesn't have nose, doesn't have a body. That's an insult. If I say, oh, there's this person, they don't have eyes, they don't have ears, they don't have a nose, they don't have a tongue, that's an insult, right? So the Mayavadis are the biggest insulters of Krishna. And they deny that Krishna has a spiritual body, and they say so many things that are insulting about Krishna. That's why we should never associate with Mayavadis. In fact, Lord Chaitanya said, if you take the time to read Bhagavatam, the Mayavad philosophy, you risk never understanding who Krishna is. And the word is never with a big N. So we should be careful about reading Mayavad philosophies. And they just will confuse you. But Prabhupada explains what Mayavad philosophy is and points, how nefarious it is and how dangerous it is. So if we read about Mayavad philosophy from Srila Prabhupada, we don't get contaminated by it. If we read Mayavad philosophy written by Mayavadis, we will get contaminated by it. So the purport says, Lord Shiva or Rudra is the king of the ghosts. Ghostly characters worship Lord Shiva to be gradually guided toward a path of self-realization. Most Mayavadi philosophers are mostly worshippers of Lord Shiva, and Sripad Sankaracharya is considered to be the incarnation of Lord Shiva for preaching godlessness to the Mayavadi philosophers. Ghosts are bereft of a physical body because of their grievously sinful acts, such as suicide. The last resort of the ghostly characters in human society is to take shelter of suicide, either material or spiritual. Material suicide causes loss of the physical body, and the spiritual suicide causes loss of the individual identity. Mayavadi philosophers desire to lose their individuality and merge into the impersonal spiritual Brahmajyoti existence. Lord Shiva, being very kind to the ghosts, sees that although they are condemned, they get physical bodies. He places them into the wombs of women who indulge in sexual intercourse regardless of the restrictions on the time and circumstances. Kasyapa wanted to impress this fact upon Diti so that she might wait for a while. Now, if you read this to somebody, let's say your co-worker, you read this purport, they say, "Are you crazy? Where did you learn all this stuff? What are you smoking?" They just can't understand. There's so much in ignorance. They just can't understand these things. Only devotees are able to understand these things. And why is that? Because some people are cursed because of committing too many sinful activities in previous life, in this life. And therefore, they're not able to understand this. So we have to be careful to not associate with bad people, because bad people will teach us bad habits. And bad habits lead to being cursed because of violating the sanctity of the body and the mind by engaging, in alcoholism and drugs and things like that. There's this one lady that I knew. She was sort of, she knew a little bit about Krishna consciousness. So one day I went to I went to some program downtown, and she was outside of the program with a couple of men, and they were taking fentanyl. Now, when you take fentanyl is a very, very dangerous drug, very dangerous. And so when they were outside of this program. It was the downtown. I forget the name of the place. Anyway, but I knew who she was. And then when I was walking to go inside the program, I see her doing something. She had some matches, and she was lighting something, and then heating it on a little fire that she had made. And she was preparing drugs to take herself after already administering drugs to two men that were there. Now, the two men were completely drugged. So one of them was sitting down, his head down between his knees, and the other one was just standing up. It was like his body was sort of like bent, just standing up, right, and not moving. That means they were both very, very drugged. Right? And now, after making preparing the drugs and giving it to the two men, now she was preparing some more of the drug to take herself. And what happens when you take, these type of drugs like fentanyl and others? You usually end up so, drugged that you can't move. You just stand in one position. Sometimes the positions are very, very awkward. You don't move. You just stand there like that, or you sit down like that, and you're experiencing the effects of the drug. And if you go downtown, different places, you see people like that are completely drugged, and it's like shocking to see it. And they're living like that until, obviously they're inviting death when they live like that, because you're basically you're destroying your body. Okay, so text 24, it says, Lord Shiva, the king of the ghosts, sitting on the back of his bull carrier, travels at this time. And this is Kashyapa when he's speaking to his wife, Iti, and accompanied by ghosts who follow him for their welfare. Lord Shiva or Rudra is the king of the ghosts. Ghostly characters worship Lord Shiva to be gradually guided toward a path of self-realization. Mayavadi philosophers are mostly worshippers of Lord Shiva, and Sripad Sankaracharya is considered to be the incarnation of Lord Shiva for preaching godlessness to the Mayavadi philosophers. Ghosts are bereft of a physical body because of their grievously sinful acts such as suicide. The last resort of the ghostly characters in human society is to take shelter of suicide, either material or spiritual. Material suicide causes loss of the physical body, and spiritual suicide causes loss of the individual identity. Mayavadi philosophers desire to lose their individuality and merge into the impersonal, spiritual, Brahma Jyoti existence. Now someone might say, well, it's spiritual. Why? It sounds like there's something wrong, but it's spiritual, isn't it? Well, the Mayavadi, but the let's say the Brahma Jyoti existence is actually a fallen state. It is not, it's not like being a devotee and engaging in devotional service. In this world, there is devotional service, even in possibility of devotional service, even in Narak or hell. And there's devotional service in the spiritual world, and there's devotional service, possibility on earth, and so forth. There's only one place where there's no devotional service. That is in merging into the Brahma Jyoti. There's no devotional service there. Although it's considered spiritual, the Brahma Jyoti is a spiritual state, but there's no devotional service. People are sort of caught in a limbo place. You're not, there's no action, there's no, let's say, interactions also. You're just like a zombie. So it says here, ghosts are bereft of his physical body because of their grievously sinful acts such as suicide. The last resort of the ghostly characters in human society is to take shelter of suicide, either material or spiritual. See, nowadays, you hear about kids that commit suicide, is it not? You read about it, they're committing suicide, high school kids and so forth. And that means they're ghostly haunted. How do you get ghostly haunted? Well, ghosts like to enter into the body of people who don't bathe regularly, who eat horrible things, meat, take drugs, all these things that are, let's say, very bad for the human body and mind, lessen one's desire to live. So the ghost will try and seize the body of a person whose desire to live is weakened, or they're actually hell bent to die. So just like nowadays, you read these. I don't know if you read the news much. I sort of just keep up with the news just to see all the nonsense that's going on. But it's very instructive also, so that you know what new trends are going on in society, new nonsense things that are going on in society, so you avoid them. But many, there not many, but there are tendencies by kids to join groups that are mutilating their bodies. And why did they do that? I don't know why they do that. But you can see them. They usually dress in black clothes, and sometimes they purposely mutilate their bodies. You'll see 2 lumps in their forehead. It looks like a demon. I don't know. Have you ever seen anything like that in school? They dress in black clothes. They have black. Sometimes the girls put black lipstick, black fingernail polish, things like that. And they have their own groups because they have their own culture. So they associate with other kids that are like that, and they train new kids to be like that also. And it's a certain identity. It's not a very healthy identity, but it's a certain identity. So kids that feel estranged from their family or from what you call like kids who are straight, they join these other groups where they practice sometimes ghost worship or demon worship. Nowadays, they have because the United States, has protects religious activity. They start religions where they worship either ghosts or demons, and then they have to give them in school. After school, they have to give them a classroom where they can practice their religion of worshiping ghosts or demons. See, there's some things about freedom and democracy that are very bad. In fact, Prabhupada called democracy demonocracy. Demon, yeah, because in the name of democracy, people can start believing, in ghosts, or not ghosts, but worshiping devils and demons, right? Like, for example, even in India, you have people that worship Ravana. People that worship Ravana.
And Mother Kali.
Mother Kali.
Or
Also.
all these.
Yeah. They're mostly in South India. I don't know why.
They're in North as well, Maharaj.
There's no, okay. Well, maybe the Kali worshippers, but the ones that worship Ravana, I don't know if they're.
They're mostly Sri Lankan.
Yeah, Sri Lankan. That's why I say South. Yeah. They think that Ravana was actually a good guy, wasn't a bad guy. He had bad rap about him by the others. They worship him. There was one man in World War II, one Indian man, he put Hitler on his altar and was worshiping him. Why? Because he was supplying raw materials to the Nazis, and he became rich by doing it. So he decided to worship Hitler because of Hitler, he was making a lot of money. So he put him on his altar. Yeah, so there's a lot of strange things in this world. I mean, reality is stranger than fiction. I usually think, you see these fictional movies and things, and there are things that are you don't normally see, but reality is more, let's say, more unpredictable or more shocking than fiction. You see so many strange things that are happening in this world, and leading to ruining people's lives. Okay, so in this purport it says, ghosts are bereft of a physical body because of their grievously sinful acts, such as suicide. The last resort of the ghostly characters in human society is to take shelter of suicide, either material or spiritual. Material suicide causes loss of the physical body, and spiritual suicide causes loss of the individual identity. Mayavadi philosophers desire to lose their individuality and merge into the impersonal spiritual Brahmajyoti existence. Now, you can say, well, wait a minute, I thought the Brahmajyoti was spiritual light. It is. It is. But in order to merge into it, you have to give up your individuality. So actually, it's a fallen condition. It's not, although the Brahmajyoti is spiritual light, but by merging into it, you can only merge into the Brahmajyoti by denying your individuality. Okay, so Mayavadi philosophers desire to lose their individuality and merge into the impersonal spiritual Brahmajyoti existence. Lord Shiva, being very kind to the ghosts, sees that although they are condemned, they get physical bodies. He places them into the wombs of women who indulge in sexual intercourse regardless of the restrictions on the time and circumstance. Kasyapa wanted to impress this fact upon Diti so that she might wait for a while. Well, if you give good advice to a nonsense person, they don't take it. So the symptom of a nonsense person is that they don't take good advice. If you tell them, look, you shouldn't smoke, it's not good for you. Or you shouldn't smoke marijuana, that's even worse than just smoking cigarettes. It's not good for you. And then, so people are forewarned, but still they do the bad thing. They don't take seriously good advice. And that's a symptom of someone who is going to basically destroy their life by taking up bad habits and being addicted to them. So Kashyapa Muni is explaining to Didi what's going to happen if they, have copulate at the wrong time of day. So let's see what Diti says or does. Text 25. Lord Shiva's body is reddish and he is unstained, but he is covered with ashes. His hair is dusty from the whirlwind dust of the burning crematorium. He is the younger brother of your husband, and he sees with his 3 eyes. Wow. That's a real tremendous realization is a person has 3 eyes. Purport. Lord Shiva is not an ordinary living entity, nor is he in the category of Vishnu or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is far more powerful than any living entity up to the standard of Brahma. Yet he is not on an equal level with Vishnu. Since he is almost like Vishnu, Shiva can see past, present, and future. One of his eyes is like the sun, another is like the moon, and his third eye, which is between his eyebrows, is like fire. He can generate fire from his middle eye, and he is able to vanquish any powerful living entity, including Brahma. Yet he does not live pompously in a nice house, etc., nor does he possess any material properties. Although he is master of the material world, he lives mostly in the crematorium where dead bodies are burnt, and the whirlwind dust of the crematorium is his bodily dress. He is unstained by material contamination. Kashyapa took him as his younger brother because the youngest sister of Diti, Kasypa's wife, was married to Lord Shiva. The husband of one's sister is considered one's brother. By the social relationship, Lord Shiva happened to be the younger brother of Kashyapa. Kashyapa warned his wife that because Lord Shiva would see their sex indulgence, the time was not appropriate. Diti might argue that they would enjoy sex life in a private place, but Kashyapa reminded her that Lord Shiva has three eyes, called the sun, moon, and fire, and one cannot escape his vigilance any more than one can escape Vishnu. Although seen by the police, a criminal is sometimes not immediately punished. The police wait for a proper time to apprehend him. The forbidden time for sexual intercourse would be noted by Lord Shiva, and Diti would meet with proper punishment by giving birth to a child of ghostly character or a godless impersonal. Kashyapa foresaw this, and thus he warned his wife Diti. Well, there's a lot of realizations in this purport, and we can understand by the behavior of the child if the child was begotten in a wrong way by the parents. So you see, there's a right way and wrong way for everything, including, trying to have a child. So, and there's no question of privacy because Shiva has three eyes, and with his third eye, he could go anywhere. Right? So we always have witnesses. Like, for example, if you think, well, I'll go into my room, I'll lock the door, I'll close the curtains, I'll turn the light off, nobody will know what I'm doing. No, it doesn't work. You're being watched all the time, or we are being watched all the time. There's always witnesses to what we're doing. Even though we lock the door, we turn the light off, we get under the bed sheets and things that we're, now no one knows what I'm doing. No, there are witnesses all the time. There are bugs, there are different types of living entities in the room. And of course, Lord Shiva has three eyes. And of course, Paramatma is in the heart. So there's no question of being alone. There's no question of having absolute privacy. It's not there. It's an illusion. But most people don't realize that. And everything is noted by Krishna. Right? He knows our desires. He knows what we do. He knows what good things we do, what bad things we do. So that's the first thing that we have to learn in spiritual life, that there's no question of privacy. That every act is being witnessed by someone. It can be human beings, or it can be, ghosts, or it can be, obviously, Krishna himself was in our heart. So this idea that you're alone, nobody likes you, blah, 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 like that, that's false. We're always being observed by someone, and ultimately by Paramatma. So there's no question of privacy. Some people think, well, I locked the door, I turned the lights off, and closed the curtains, so nobody knows what I'm doing. No, it's not a fact. There's always a witness, and it's a false idea to think that you can get away by closing the door, turning the lights off, and closing the curtains of the windows, and so no one can see what you're doing. There's always going to be a witness. The ultimate witness is Paramatma. The super soul is in your heart. So how can you escape being seen, and how can you not be, punished for bad behavior? You're going to be, because there's no way of having privacy. usually people want to have privacy when they want to break the principles of Krishna consciousness. It's just like, on a Ekadasi day, if you go swimming and you drink some water underwater when you're doing, complete fasting, you think that nobody sees you. Because when you duck your head onto the surface of the water and then you drank some water, there's somebody seeing you, believe me. So we have to understand these things. We can't get away with anything in material life because there's always going to be a witness. Okay, so, and there is a proper time for doing things and an improper time for doing things. This is what we're learning here in this story of Diti and Kashyapa Muni. So it says, last sentences, the forbidden time for sexual intercourse would be noted by Lord Shiva, and Diti would meet with proper punishment by giving birth to a child of ghostly character or a godless impersonance. Kashyapa foresaw this, and thus he warned his wife Diti. So we should take notice of things that we cannot actually see, but are there. And like, for example, there's a forbidden time for sexual intercourse. And then also, there are times where Lord Shiva and his followers are flying through the air, and therefore there's a time it's called forbidden time for sexual intercourse would be noted by Lord Shiva, and Diti would meet with proper punishment by giving birth to a child of ghostly character or godless impersonance. Kashyapa foresaw this, and thus he warned his wife Diti. Now, does Diti listen to him or not listen to him? Next verse, 26. Lord Shiva regards no one as his relative, yet there is no one who is not connected with Krishna, with him, Lord Shiva. He does not regard anyone as very favorable or abominable. We respectfully worship the remnants of his foodstuff, and we vow to accept what is rejected by him. So, therefore, Lord Shiva is, he sees everyone equally. He doesn't see this is a good bad person, this is a bad man. He sees everyone equally. So that's called equal vision. When you see with equal vision, you don't see the faults of people so much, but you try and see the good qualities, if there are, of someone. And you don't judge people on your standard of, let's say, understanding, but based on the fact that everyone is a son of God, or everyone is coming from Krishna originally, so they all have a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whether they know it or they don't know it. But you know it because you know the proper understanding of philosophy. So text 26 says, Lord Shiva regards no one as his relative, yet there is no one who is not connected with him. He does not regard anyone as very favorable or abominable. We respectfully worship the remnants of his foodstuff, and we vow to accept what is rejected by him. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Kashyapa informed his wife that just because Lord Shiva happened to be his brother-in-law, that should not encourage her in her offense towards him. Kashyapa warned her that actually Lord Shiva is not connected with anyone, nor is anyone his enemy. since he is one of the three controllers of the universal affairs, meaning material affairs, basically, he is equal to everyone. His greatness is incomparable because he is a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this phrase, equal to everyone, is very important. It means that he sees everyone on an equal level, such as, like, for example, he understands that Krishna is in the heart of everyone. Therefore, everyone is like a walking holy temple, because they're carrying Krishna in their heart, right? And having that type of vision is transcendental vision. Now, that can be a little dangerous also, because a person who has that type of vision may not, warn others of a bad person, because they see everyone equally. So in order to be, let's say a father or mother or a teacher or policeman and things like that, you have to see who's good and who's bad. But if you only see everyone as being good, that could be dangerous. Not for the person that's seeing like that, but for other people who associate with that person who's seeing like that. So because that's a very high level of spiritual, let's say, advancement, to be able to see everyone equally. But in normal life, you have to see who's good, who's bad, who you should associate with, who you should not associate with, and so forth. If you see everyone equally, you can end up associating with bad people. When some people are maybe able to do that, maybe they're also able to help the bad people improve themselves, but we shouldn't, especially young kids, associate with bad people, thinking that we will not be influenced by them. We will be influenced, no doubt about it. And seeing, nonsense movies, and think that will not be influenced by it. You will be influenced by it, and no doubt about it. So here it says, Kashyapa warned his wife, Diti, that actually Lord Shiva is not connected with anyone, nor is anyone his enemy. Since he is one of the three controllers of the universal affairs, he's equal to everyone. His greatness is incomparable because he is a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is said that among all the devotees of the Personality of Godhead, Lord Shiva is the greatest. Thus, the remnants of foodstuff left by him are accepted by other devotees as Mahaprasada, or great spiritual foodstuff. The remnants of foodstuff offered to Lord Krishna are called prasada. But when the same prasada is eaten by a great devotee like Lord Shiva, it is called Mahaprasada. Lord Shiva is so great that he does not care for the material prosperity for which every one of us is so eager. Parvati, who is the powerful material nature personified, is under his full control as his wife, yet he does not use her even to build a residential house. He prefers to remain without shelter, and his great wife also agrees to live with him humbly. So here's an amazing statement. Parvati, who can, people are praying to have opulence, she doesn't accept any opulence herself, and her husband doesn't do anything for her. They don't have a house. She doesn't have, nice clothes or nice jewelry and things like that. Shiva does nothing for her because he's meditating all the time. But yet she completely is dedicated to him. But yet other people worship her to have opulence. So it's very strange, and they're worshiping her to have opulence, where she herself does not accept any opulence. Okay, but the being, let's say, completely dedicated to a good husband, that is a form of opulence. Why? It means that the husband is going to go back to Godhead and the wife is going to go back to Godhead. Right? So that would be the ultimate opulence. But in the material world, Lord Shiva is always meditating, and he always is in control of his mind and senses. Sometimes when he gets upset, it's his wife, Parvati, that stops him from, becoming violent. So it's a good couple, Parvati and Shiva. All right, so it says here, Parvati, who is the powerful material nature personified, is under his, meaning Lord Shiva's, full control as his wife. Yet he does not use her even to build a residential house. He prefers to remain without shelter, and his great wife also agrees to live with him humbly. People in general worship Goddess Durga, the wife of Lord Shiva, for material prosperity, but Lord Shiva engages her in his service without material desire. He simply advises his great wife that of all kinds of worship, the worship of Vishnu is the highest, and greater than that is the worship of a great devotee or anything in relation with Vishnu. So in other words, Shiva doesn't do anything for his wife. Now, would a woman today live with a husband who does nothing for them? That's an interesting question to ask. Well, it depends who the husband is. If he's someone like Lord Shiva, who's always meditating, who's always self-controlled, who's always kind, etc., then maybe. But in general, no one wants to live with someone who doesn't do anything. No one wants to live with a husband or a wife that does nothing for them. But this is the case of Lord Shiva. He doesn't even give his wife a place a house. They're both completely renounced. Lord Shiva is so great that he does not care for the material prosperity for which every one of us is so eager. Parvati, who is the powerful material nature personified, is under his full control as his wife, yet he does not use her even to build a residential house. He prefers to remain without shelter, and his great wife also agrees to live with him humbly. People in general worship Goddess Durga, the wife of Lord Shiva, for material prosperity, but Lord Shiva engages her in a service without material desire. He simply advises his great wife that of all kinds of worship, the worship of Vishnu is the highest, and greater than that is the worship of a great devotee or anything in relation with Vishnu. So, if a woman marries a man that does nothing for her, no house, no washing machine, no car, no cell phone, no credit card, right? How long do you think she would live with that person? Not very long. But yet, Shiva doesn't do anything for his wife, Durga, but yet she remains always loyal to him. And Durga is worshipped by demons to have opulence and so forth, but yet she herself lives completely, a renounced life like her husband, Lord Shiva. Okay, so I think we'll stop there. Are there any questions?
One question, Maharaj, probably my initial observation, then probably I will take advice from you how to handle. One of my friend is a Shiva devotee, He prays every day, 1 hour, spends 1.5 hour, 2 hours every day in the morning.
Yeah.
The minute he heard that Shiva came from into the material world, came from the forehead of Brahma,
Yeah.
and I got very upset when I said the statement, because he has been putting effort, dedicating time every day, 1-2 hours before day starts, becoming a devotee of Shiva, and he got upset that
you
he is
said
dependent on Shiva is dependent on others.
Uh-huh. Well, I mean, he doesn't read the Shastras. Or I just read maybe the Shiva Shastras that consider Shiva to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, something like that.
Yeah, and then he went and further adding more under his upset. If you if you read Shiva Shastras, Shiva will be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If you read Devi Shastras, they will project Devi is the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Right.
Similarly, if you read
Krishna.
Vaishnava, and then they'll project Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Keep adding. And then good thing is I gave him Bhagavatam, said he is started reading.
Yeah.
Hopefully Krishna will show mercy over time.
I don't know. Have you talked to him recently?
I kept in constant touch with this person. Yes, he is making progress.
He's trying to
Reading,
make. Well,
so reading every day slowly.
He's not angry with whatever you say.
Just took the only took what he's saying and where he is currently. So then just slowly.
Yeah.
Take the
So
conversation.
the point is that when a person gets educated, then they understand things correctly. And if they're not educated, then they don't understand things correctly, and they make a lot of mistakes. So you're being very kind to him. Cool.
Thank you.
So we seem to have a question online. Shrujana Mataji.
Sure.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. We were talking about how someone commits suicide, you become the ghost. So the question is, like, we all understand that when we are born, we are also having the end date. We come with the birth date and the end date. So is that the free will they are misusing to end their life? If so, what type of karma does it fall under? Like I was studying this prarabdha karma. I mean, I was hearing from some of the lectures the 3 different types of karma. Like, being that sinful of committing, I was just trying to contemplate. I have someone very close to me who committed suicide, and this is the reflection is coming from that side, like how long they have to suffer, and like why would anyone do this, in the thought, is that the free will which is making them take these decisions?
Well, the people who commit suicide are very, very frustrated, and because they have a lot of material desires and they're not able to satisfy them, so it makes them frustrated. And sometimes they get so frustrated that they want to commit suicide, to kill themselves, so they no longer have all these hankerings that they can't satisfy. But when you kill, when you commit suicide, then you get a ghost body, but the same desires are there, but now you don't have a human body to be able to engage in any sense gratification. So that your situation is worse. It doesn't get better because you commit suicide, because you have an eternal soul, you're not going to die. But now you don't have a material body, in the body of a ghost, so you're not able to engage in sense gratification, but the desire is still there. See, what happens when you become Krishna conscious? You become purified from engaging in sinful activities. So Other people, they do different pujas, and they go on parikramas, and they listen to lectures, oftentimes of Mahabodhis. So they get purified to a certain degree, but the desire for sense gratification is not purified. It just, in other words, when they're hearing the lectures of the Mayavadis, they get some degree maybe of purification, but after the lecture is over, they go back to the way they were before. They don't really change their way of life. And therefore, with devotees who continually hear lectures given by bona fide devotees and who engage in practical devotional service, they eventually become purified of the desire for sense gratification. So devotee preachers are killers. They kill the desire for sense gratification and support the desire for devotional service to Krishna. That's the difference between a Mayavadi and a devotee. The Mayavadi might give up engaging in sinful activity, but they don't necessarily take up devotional service to Krishna. So therefore, they can fall down very easily. Whereas the devotee who's actively engaged in devotional service and always having good association of good devotees will not fall down so easily. And even if they do fall down, the devotees will help that person come back again. I remember once, a long time ago, before I was married, but my wife, before I was married, but she was, obviously she was a brahmachari, and she left the movement. And then some of the devotees went to see her. She'd gone home to her mother and talked to her and preached to her. And eventually she came back because they went to see her, right? And then she realized she had made a mistake, so she came back. So it's very important to be in association of genuine devotees. As far as your question goes, I didn't quite understand what your question was, Mataji. Can you say it again, but in simple, straightforward language?
Sure, Maharaj, I'll try. If, as an adult, you committing suicide or finishing your life, I understand that we have material desires and somehow you are caught up in that frustration. But when it comes down to kids, we see a lot of kids are committing suicides too. We are born with a birth date and an end date, right? Like we are born with the number of breaths we take. And why are people killing themselves before finishing that end date? Or is that suicide the end date? Or they are misusing their free will, Maharaj. So,
well, that's the point. Everybody has limited free will, not unlimited, but limited free will. And they can either choose to follow Krishna's instructions or not follow them. Either way, Krishna knows what's going to happen to you. So when they don't follow Krishna's instructions, they might commit suicide and other self-destructive behaviors. But thinking that their problems will go away by doing that. But the problem gets worse because they become a ghost without a gross material body. So they still have the same desires and hankerings, and now they don't have the material body to indulge in their desires. So their position becomes worse. Their idea is, you die, everything's over, there's no consciousness, you're put, in the grave, and you no longer exist. That's not true. It's a false narrative. And because of that, people think that, suicide is a solution to their problems. It only complicates their problems more. It doesn't solve their problem. So suicide is like the worst decision you can make because it doesn't free you from all these desires that you can't basically satisfy. That's why they commit suicide. They have desires and they can't satisfy them, and so they desire to eliminate their existence so they don't have to be overwhelmed all the time by frustrated desires. But the soul is eternal. You can't kill it. So they get even into a worse condition or situation than before. So the best thing is to hear, as we're doing, knowledge from the Shastras, so that we understand, what is right and what is wrong. Some people think, suicide is right because it'll end your suffering. It's not true. It's not true at all. It'll just make your suffering worse because you have an eternal soul. So if you refuse to accept Vedic knowledge, you just go deeper into the hole of ignorance and you suffer even more. So you don't realize that until you commit suicide. Now, in the body of a ghost, you still have the same desires as you did before, but there's no way you can satisfy them because you're a ghost. You don't have a human body anymore. So we need to read the Shastras in order to understand what is reality. Reality is that unless you become a devotee and surrender to the Lord and engage in devotional service, you're always going to be harassed by so many desires and so many false ideas that makes your situation always worse, not better. And suicide puts you in the worst condition. It doesn't solve any problems. It makes it much worse. Okay, so I think
Hare
we'll stop right
Krishna.
there.
Yes. Hare Krishna.
Thank you
We'll
very
see you
much.
again tomorrow.
All
Hare
glories to
Krishna.
Srila
Prabhupada ki
Prabhupada.
jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare. Hare Ram.